Do you think we, with the contingent we currently have, I think we probably ought to get going?
I think so.
All right. Well, I'm going to call the February meeting of the Dallas chapter of the SCR to order. And with that, I would ask our Vice President, Mark Harrison, to give us the rules of engagement for the meeting.
Okay, hang on just a second. All right, hopefully you can all see this. This is just a notice that because this meeting is being filmed and recorded, I want to let everybody know by joining this virtual meeting of the Dallas chapter of TXR, you acknowledge and agree that these proceedings may be made public. So, and I would ask that everyone, if you're not actively speaking, that you keep your computer on mute. That will help make the meeting go a little smoother. Okay, Mr. President.
All right. At this time, I would ask our chaplain, Mr. Frank Pounders, if he would give us the invocation. And as you'll see on the screen, this morning we had a terrible accident on Interstate 75 at Walnut Hill, and we lost one of our first responders from the Dallas police force. So, Frank, if you would, please give us the opening invocation.
Thank you, and good morning. Take a moment with me. Realize that we have people that are dedicated to the idea that safety and peace and rights abide with us at all times. And sometimes they give their life in service. And that happened this morning. It happened yesterday. And we pray that such things stop happening. But as they do, we send their souls searching for and finding the heaven. Now, for all of us who are here, we say thank you, God, for allowing us to be in this meeting, even in this virtual form. We are linked together by our love, by our dedication to our country and to its causes. So we say thank you, and we send our meeting into operation with the full intent that it will create that which brings this nation into and through the wonderful paths of righteousness, goodness, democracy, and joy. It's in this spirit we say thank you, God, in the name of the Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Frank.
Yes, sir.
All right, for our pledges, I would ask that our color guard commander and secretary, Mr. Bill Watts, would you please lead us? And everyone else can go on to mute.
Gentlemen, let's say the pledges. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pledge to the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. The SAR pledge. We, the descendants of the heroes of the American Revolution, who by their sacrifices established the United States of America, reaffirmed our faith in the principles of liberty and the constitutional republic, and solemnly pledge ourselves to defend them against every foe.
Thank you, Bill. Well, this morning, again, on such a cold and blustery day, I appreciate the attendance, and it's good to see everybody. Got a pretty good group this morning. I especially want to thank President Petty, because I know you got to jump over to Arlington, but thank you for joining. And although a chapter member for a long time, David Temple, as former president and chapter president and state president, thank you for giving me some guidance this week, because I really appreciate your advice and counsel. With that, Mr. Mark Harrison, we have a great guest that we had a chance to talk to yesterday, and I would ask that you please give a very good introduction to him.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're honored today. I think it's going to be a special meeting. I'm really excited about this. We have Mr. Stephen Jenkins here with us today. I met Stephen and his wife, I don't know, probably a year and a half ago. He was speaking at Highland Springs, and we had a chance to visit then. So we talked a little bit about having him speak to our chapter and talked about possible topics there. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in just a minute. But he's been presenting in London, DFW, and California for the last 15 years. He's a historian, educator, and very much in demand. Speaks at a number of places around this area. His subjects include, but are not limited to, Winston Churchill and the special relationship between Great Britain and the United States and the royal family. He's been proposed for honorary British Council for Dallas, and he has lectured at Richland College in Dallas as well as Churchill College in London. Currently, he has a center of presentations at the Englishman's Inn and the Englishman's Parlor in Waxahachie. He's also establishing an international Winston Churchill Society in North Texas, centered in the DFW area. Stephen has dual U.S. and British citizenship, and he's an ordained minister in the Free Church of England. And sitting beside him out of camera range, his son Alex is there with him too, who I think is assisting. So do want to welcome him. He's going to be talking to us about the other side of the coin. I guess it's what Paul Harvey would call the rest of the story. He's going to talk to us about the British view of Benedict Arnold. Stephen, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Mark. Thank you very much. And welcome, everybody. It's good to be with you this cold morning in Texas. The last time I was so cold was in 1983 when I visited Dallas for the first time. I think we're going to hit that record again pretty soon. Yes, so I'm going to present the British view of Benedict Arnold. And of course, say a little bit about what happened before he went to London as well, of course, because it has a great bearing on how he was received in London. Growing up in England, I was very interested in the American Civil War, very interested. And then my interest was piqued in the American Revolution when, age 16, I went to Valley Forge, and that was a great experience. The Arnolds originally in England were from Somerset, which is where I'm from. They were Celtic, yeah. They were, have a Celtic heritage from Somerset in England, in the West Country. So I thought you might like to know that. At the bottom it says Benedict Arnold, American patriot. Of course, that was what he was before he decided to go to the other side, as it were. And I'm a dual national, so I suppose I can identify with some of the ways perhaps he was feeling. Before I became a citizen in 2004, I remember clearly at the turn of the century in 2000, still feeling a little bit confused by July 4th and wanting perhaps to keep a low profile on July 4th. And I can remember going to see The Patriots with Mel Gibson, just kind of get out of the way on that day. But I have enjoyed looking into this because I found out things about him that I really didn't know before. Some really interesting things, like the fact his family came from Somerset. And the second quote underneath him says, "The man has become synonymous with treason," and that's all over the world. It's one of those expressions that talks about a traitor. But before he betrayed America, he saved it. And I think you're probably more familiar with that than I am. Can we have the second slide? Let's just go there. Yeah, okay. So the second side is the Second Battle of Saratoga. and it's misspelt up there. I'm sorry about that. Should be Saratoga. As my old maths teacher said, that's today's deliberate mistake. Did you have a teacher like that? See if everyone was awake, see if they'd noticed today's deliberate mistake. Bemis Heights. I think this is the part of the charge which he became famous for, and which he was wounded, obviously, very badly in there. But let's say a little bit about him before all this happened. He was born into a merchant family in Connecticut. Part of his character, which I think indicates perhaps how he progressed a little bit through life, he was quick-tempered, he was fearless, he was very brave, he was loved by his men, and he always led from the front, as at Bemis Heights. The other part of him was he didn't like being overlooked for promotion, and he was overlooked many times for promotion, and this rankled with him deep down in his soul. I think if there's any other general in American history that has similar characteristics about fearless, leading from the front, having a grudge against being overlooked, I think we would look to George Patton. But George Patton never betrayed his country. So there's the difference. There's a difference right there. When he was growing up, he went into the family business of a merchant with ships going to Canada and also to the Caribbean. And he was a good sailor as well. And as we'll find out a little bit later. The next slide is one of the boot at Saratoga on the National Battlefield site, commemorating the wounded foot of Benedict Arnold, but not mentioning his name at all, just the boot. So they couldn't even bring themselves to mention his name and to put it on there after what he did. There was no name, in other words, to honor him there. Let's go back to the boot for a moment, because one of the interesting, I find it really interesting anyway, things that I found out about after the Battle of Saratoga, obviously Benedict was very badly wounded there, and he ended up in a field hospital in Albany. And in the bed next to him was an ancestor of a British man I knew very, very well and had a lot of respect for. And the name of the person next to him was Major John Dyke Ackland, who was on the other side. And so there they were, both laid in bed, both wounded badly. Sign of the times in those days, the British Major, John Ackland, his wife was allowed to go in and see him. And as wars progressed, of course, all those things didn't happen. The reason I'm interested in that is an ancestor of his at Exeter University in England, Sir John Ackland, taught me. And so as soon as I saw that name and saw that he was in a bed next to Benedict Arnold, I was very, very interested in that. So the next slide shows the putting of the plans of West Point, the act of betrayal into John Andre's boot. So boots appear again here, don't they? It is said many times that Arnold was to receive for this act £20,000. In fact, the agreement was if West Point had been taken, he would have received £20,000. As it was, the agreement signed was if it was not successful, he would get £6,000, which he did receive eventually on arrival in London. Now, his wife is very controversial, isn't she? Mrs. Margaret, or Peggy Shippen, as she's known from Philadelphia. The more I read about her, the more interested I became in her. We haven't got time to go into her much today, but that's another talk for the American Daughters of the Revolution, or in fact, the Daughters of the British Empire, which are both here in Dallas. So that's another thing there. We'll talk a bit more about her though later on. She does come into the picture very much in London. And so here we have Benedict Arnold getting on board the British warship Vulture. And from then on, he was going to put on the red coat, but he was only used twice in the war. And one of the reasons he was only used twice was he was given command of a Patriot battalion, a British Patriot battalion, but to actually get a command of a larger unit, which his experience would have warranted without doubt, and his achievements without doubt, British subalterns refused to serve under him. There were no British subalterns that would serve under him. And so it went on, but Arnold would have felt very at home aboard the ship. Don't forget, one of the reasons people say he won the war before he went to the other side was the naval action at Lake Champlain up in Canada, where he commanded 16 ships and he delayed the British invasion from Canada, giving very valuable time for the Patriots to form some kind of defense. So he moved to London, and he lived in London until his death. We forgot to mention his family connections go back to Norwich, Connecticut, and that's going to be important when we get to London, because he gets some support to kind of repair his reputation in London from Connecticut. Here we have a plaque on the house in Marylebone. Now, those of you who know London and visited it, this house in Marylebone is very, very near to Marble Arch, Park Lane, and of course the Grosvenor Hotel, very famous Grosvenor Hotel, which many Americans stay at when they go there. So it says there he stayed there from 1796 to 1801, 5 years. And the reason for that is, before I go into the reason for that, why it's only 5 years, let's talk a little bit about how this plaque got put on the house there. He had an ancestor in London called Peter Arnold, a descendant, if you like, and he applied for one of these very famous blue plaques, which you see on houses in London and across the country for very famous people. And when he applied for it to the Westminster Council, area council, they would have had to put it up, they would have had to borne the expense of it, and they didn't cooperate. Now, this was put up in the 80s when Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister, and undoubtedly they would have consulted with the government, and it would be seen as a kind of hostile act, if you like, to commemorate Benedict Arnold using government money and extolling, his fame, etc. But Peter Arnold, the descendant, was determined to do it. So he applied again and said, I'm going to use my own money and put it up there. And then he was granted permission. Arnold's time in London was not a very happy time for reasons that we're going to go into now. He had a very chilly welcome when he got to London. Generally, the only person, one of the few people rather, not the only person, one of the few people who was very glad to see him and did make him welcome, and Peggy in particular, his wife, was George III. But many considered him to be unprincipled, and he did have a reputation for corruption And that was brought to the attention of George Washington and the authorities many times, whether he was when he was in Philadelphia, when he was governor of Philadelphia, or at other times during his career. He had this reputation for being a little bit corrupt and wanting to feather his own nest too much. In fact, Arnold and his wife were greeted with hisses when they attended the theatre in London, and they were lambasted. They were heavily criticized in the press. And his aspirations for a high office in the British Army were never realized. They were never realized. He was never given a generalship or a high ranking, which he wanted, and probably which his talents deserved in the British Army. And so his mind again turned to making a living, because he was a merchant and he had this experience with ships. And he went to St. John's in Canada and he did work there. Eventually became very unpopular in Canada also. And there was a riot eventually against him because of his probably hard-nosed business dealings or because of corruption. So he's not Canada's favorite son either. But when he got back to England, when he was back in London where they'd established themselves, he wanted to join the East India Company. Now, the East India Company was this big trading company in India where fortunes were actually made. And so it would fit his merchant business experience. But again, he was told he was blocked because of that. And the reason they said in the letter when he was blocked to going to the East India Company was that successful traitors, I'm quoting from the letter now, successful traitors are seldom greatly loved by their beneficiaries. So he was denied command in the British Army. He was denied going to the East India Company. And so he started to trade quite a lot with the West Indies. And he did form a loyalist battalion against the French in the West Indies and successfully carried on his military career then. So this is the house in Marylebone, very smart place, probably worth millions and millions now. Property's gone sky high in London. Here's the American ambassador, Matthew Winthrop Barzan, presenting his credentials to Britain's Queen Elizabeth II at Buckingham Palace in 2013. Now, he comes into the Arnold story because when he arrived in London, he was astonished to see that plaque in Marylebone, and he wanted to know who had put it up and all the part from that. And so he went on Twitter and he asked for information about it. He's actually a descendant of John Winthrop, who founded Boston. And he found out that it had been put up by a relative, and he called that relative, and he said, although we can't agree about Benedict Arnold, we can agree, and this is a very diplomatic thing to say, that he was a patriot. I suppose if you compartmentalize his life from the start of his life to the beginning, at one point he was very much a patriot. I'm not moving on. Shall we move on? All right. So here we have a picture of St. Mary's Church in Battersea, which Benedict Arnold and his family attended. It's right on the Thames, as you can see. And we've got one of those awful tower blocks at the back, modern buildings. This actually was a reconstructed church about 30 years ago, but it dates back to the 18th century, and they just rebuilt it as it was. But to have all that modern building around it kind of spoils it for me. Now, inside the church, another American had put up this memorial to Benedict Arnold. I'm going to read you the inscription underneath. This was an American, Vincent Linder. He donated the stained glass window because Benedict Arnold was eventually buried there. And this is his tribute. The two nations whom he served in turn the years of their enmity have united in this memorial as a token of their enduring friendship. So we get into the mode of the special relationship here. And another American, Bill Stanley, who was a state senator of Norwich, Connecticut, where Arnold came from, donated this plaque, which is down in the crypt of that church where Arnold is buried. And he said something interesting. I'm not sure I entirely agree with it, but it talks about forgiveness. It says, if we can forgive the Japanese for Pearl Harbor, can't we forgive him? So obviously, coming from Norwich, Connecticut, he's a little bit biased on that side. And then, by contrast, Arnold was visiting Westminster Abbey in the late 1790s, and he was observed by one person, and he had been very unhappy in England because nothing had really worked out for him very much. Looking at this memorial, but this is when Major Andre was hanged, of course, and his body was brought back in 1821. But there was a similar memorial, and Arnold was looking at it, and I probably going through his mind was, there's no way I'm going to be buried in Westminster Abbey. And in fact, he wasn't. He was buried in his local church. But it must have brought back a lot of memories for him. The biggest tribute he ever got when he was back in London was from a Secretary of State at the time of the Revolutionary War, which acknowledged Benedict's spectacular service in the Continental Army. And this is what he said. He, Benedict, was the most enterprising and dangerous of the American generals. And that was all based on his war record up to the betrayal at West Point. So I thought we'd end with, if it works, I've gone down to it, does it not come up? Talking of diplomats, the American embassy recently released this YouTube. It's only 30 seconds if we can play it. I think it's coming up. And in response to the fact that the president had taken Churchill's bust out of the White House. So there we are. That's bringing the special relationship right up to date. And I'm going to leave you now with my email because we are going to Q&A. All those present can ask me anything they like. If you don't get your question in, you can email me. That just says there what Mark said. We're reforming the International Churchill Society in Dallas in 2021 at Waxahachie, but we're also looking for a site in North Dallas as well. And if you're interested, you can view another presentation on the Crown, particularly, I know many of our wives also like looking at the Crown. It's on the Stanford Digest YouTube. If you put that in, the Crown, that will come up. That's another one I've done. Or you can come and hear me in person, again, if you want to, at the Englishman's Parlor and the Englishman's Inn in Waxahachie, Texas. So let's go to Q&A now then. That's my 20 minutes up, which I was told to keep to. So questions, comments?
Yeah.
Feel free.
The first one I would say is, first of all, thank you, because we'll get to that too. But the first question I have is, I'm going to go all the way to the end. How often do you speak in Waxahachie?
Well, once a month at the end of the month from March. And then there are some lectures and seminars at the inn. That's the hotel. The parlor is a wine bar, and they probably might interest some of you is after Easter, the first Monday after Easter. I haven't got the exact date, but you could email me, find out. I'm speaking on God and Churchill. God and Churchill. So yeah, so quite a lot coming up. Quite a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, if anybody else has questions, you will need to unmute.
Yes, yeah. Looking for the quote. Peggy.
This is Robert Kittrell. How much influence did his wife have on him?
Well, do you know, Robert, thank you very much for that question. I'm just looking for, as you were asking the question, I said we'd hear more about Peggy, because Peggy came from a very loyalist family, extremely loyalist. And undoubtedly she worked upon him. I think we all know that. And I'm sure, like all wives, had a great influence on him. But in the end, it was his decision, wasn't it? You know, and he was a strong man, a man of strong opinions. And in those days, perhaps wives didn't have so much power, or perhaps she did. She was younger than him, wasn't she? I mean, he was completely entranced by her. It's interesting. I wouldn't like to hazard a guess on it, but undoubtedly she did. But the quote I'm looking for from her is an interesting one for me. It was mentioned that I was a minister in the Free Church of England, and Alex is going through it now. You'll find a quote by Peggy Shipp in there, but I can remember it mostly. She had a lot of disappointments in her life because she was very ambitious, as Benedict was. She was hoping to have great rewards in London when she went there, and possibly be a favorite at court, and that never happened for her. But one thing she said, and she was a member of the Church of England, as it was, which the person who put the quote out said, this isn't probably typical of the Church of England. The Episcopal Church, or the Church of England, is typically Arminian and not into predestination. But Peggy said, all the disappointments we have in life are because things that we don't know, part of God's plan that we don't know. But one thing we do know is about God's goodness and mercy. And I found that interesting, because that's the Calvinistic view of life, predestination, that everything is planned out. And it's kind of a reassurance for us all, because we all get disappointments in life, don't we? But the Arnolds did have their share of them. Some of them were their own doing, of course. But she had this interesting view on things, and she was very, very loyal to Benedict. And actually, she did have some reward in her life, but she only lasted 2 years on from Benedict. Benedict died 1801. He was 60. Peggy died 2 years after him. She was only 44. But the King of England had awarded her a very large pension of £500. And that was quite a lot of money in those days. So they were made financially secure. Benedict had a pension, he had a pension, but it never fully satisfied Benedict in his quest for money, because he was a merchant before he was a soldier, and he had to make a lot of money. So the disappointment of not going to the East India Company and being kind of run out of Canada, as he was, were huge. Somebody else?
Yeah, I had a question, Mike Petrides.
Okay.
How was Benedict received in London with regard to benefits and land and title and other pensions? Can you go into more detail?
Yes, he had quite a reasonable pension from the government for what he had done. It's always difficult. It doesn't sound a lot nowadays if I give you the figures. I have them down here somewhere, but you'd have to, because of inflation, you'd have to multiply them by a tremendous amount of money. But between what he had as a pension in pounds and what was given to his wife, that was enough for them to live very comfortably if they didn't do anything else. But as I said, he was a merchant. He wanted to make more money, and he was hugely disappointed that that opportunity didn't occur in India, because India was the place where a lot of money was being made. You know, we're going through an impeachment at the moment, aren't we? There was a famous impeachment in England that lawyers will know about of a man called Warren Hastings, and he was impeached for corruption in the East India Company, as was Robert Clive, the great general who beat the French in India as well. He had to suffer impeachment for corruption in the British Parliament. So I'm no lawyer, but I understand through Magna Carta that I see we've got some lawyers there, Bob, looking at you.
Oh, hey, Stephen, this is Winston. Let me introduce you.
Oh, okay.
And
Winston.
named after your prime minister, and your although he's never been to Waxahachie.
Mm. You've never been, Winston. Or Winston's never been.
Winston, I've been to Waxahachie. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'd only driven through it 20 years ago because I'd been, in Dallas a long time. And then I got this invitation through the Reformed Episcopal Church to go and help a new church plant down there. And it was through them that I got introduced to this, all those venues that I'm talking about. Yeah. But, impeachment and Magna Carta, Bob, aren't they one of the mainstays when you go to law school? You study Magna Carta and you study, I mean, I know American law is not the same as English law, but it's based on English law, isn't it?
Yes. Actually, you really do not. The law school only has generally one 3-hour course in constitutional law. Most it's on a doctrine called interstate commerce, and we study a lot of that. And so it's not really on the basic constitutional other ways. And you hear speeches and you study the Magna Carta. And of course, many of the parts of the Magna Carta are very obscure, that are specific only to like certain towns having freedom and those type of things.
Right.
General principles have been cited by our U.S. Supreme Court hundreds of times. And they are something that they're a touchstone. They don't have any actual legal effect except for how they affected our U.S. Constitution.
Yeah. But I mean, people like Washington and Jefferson, they would, because they were much nearer in time to the impeachment of Warren Hastings and General Clive in India, they would very much have all that in mind, wouldn't they, about corruption and things like that.
I think we have time for one more question, and if maybe at the end of the meeting, though, Steve, if you'd like to hang around a little bit, there might be some additional questions beyond.
Okay.
I have one last question before we move on.
This is Jerry Pinkerton. I have a question. Did he ever later in life express regrets, especially when the Americans won the revolution?
Later in life, he was in a tavern and somebody asked him to take found out he was American, and someone asked him to take some letters back to America. And apparently he said, I just cannot go back there and I would not be welcome. I think he probably did have regrets because, it was his home country. In a way, I think about it like this, and I didn't mention it earlier, but I should have done. There were 5 British spies at Cambridge before World War II. During World War II, they were Russian spies, and after World War II. Very famous they were. 2 of them were called Burgess and Maclean. And they worked for communist Russia. and they got themselves in the British Civil Service, very high up in, to the embassy in Washington. And in the end, they all had to go to Moscow. When they got to Moscow, of course, it was a different culture and a different life. And they had many regrets because even the American ambassador, the one we saw on there, said when he phoned up the descendant of Arnold, he said, "I know that," of course, this is a very diplomatic thing to say, that Benedict Arnold's heart was in America. So I'm sure he did have a lot of regrets because his life didn't quite turn out as he expected. He didn't get the high office in the British Army, yet all his sons went into the British Army, and one of them became a lieutenant general. So that may have, he didn't live to see all of that or much of it, but all his sons went in the British Army, and they were all commissioned in the British Army. He was not. He was not commissioned in the British Army. So I'm sure he had a lot of regrets, financial and career-wise with the Army. And where you're born is always home, isn't it? So Norwich, Connecticut was always home. Maybe he wanted to be buried there. It was not going to be possible, was it? Had to be buried in Battersea.
Stephen, we really do appreciate this. I think this has been very educational for us. I know at least for me, it has been very educational. So I do appreciate your time and the information that you shared with us.
You're welcome. You're very welcome. So you want me to hang around a bit, and then if there's any more?
Yeah, if you're able to, that would be wonderful.
Okay.
If you have other commitments, certainly understand.
Well, how much longer do you think you will go?
We'll probably be about another 20 minutes or so.
Oh, that's fine. I'll hang around. There's no problem.
Okay, Mr. President.
Thank you, Stephen. Enjoyed it. And by the way, Alex, appreciate the background support that we've got there.
Yeah, well
You
done,
do the
Alex.
same thing that Mark does for me, so I know how important that is. All right, gentlemen, let's go to the officer reports. If you would, Mr. Secretary Bill Watts, would you please give us your report? If he's on mute, there he is. There he goes. Unmute, Bill.
I unmuted.
Okay.
The minutes have been sent out to the membership, and I think all we need now to do is have a vote on it.
All right, may I have a motion to approve the minutes? Everybody's muted.
So moved.
Okay, so moved by Tracy Pounders. May I have a second?
Second, Robert Kittrell.
Robert Kittrell has a second. All in favor, raise your hands. Opposed, do the same. Minutes are approved. Thank you. Mr. Secretary, continue. Mr. Secretary, sir,
Yes, sir.
continue with your report.
Slide thought up.
Okay. Okay, hang on.
There we go. I volunteered at the Rockwall Helping Hands to give out the COVID-19 shots. And I'm urging everyone in our chapter, if you have a chance, volunteer at your local vaccination clinic. They need help, and it's kind of fun. You learn a lot. And I actually got my shot. Next slide, please. We attended, a bunch of people from Texas attended the 240th anniversary of the Battle of Coens Ford National Color Guard event on January 30th. And Mr. Van Fossen is presenting a wreath on behalf of our chapter. Today is the 242nd anniversary of the Battle of Kettle Creek. Hopefully this afternoon you can access the YouTube video of this battle. I just got through attending it. It's ended, It was a very nice ceremony. I think Mr. Whitelock attended it as well. Is that right, Tom?
Yes.
Next week, we have the 240th anniversary of the crossing of the Dan River. Make sure you register for this before the 15th of this month. If you're interested in getting credit, as far as color guard credit, and our chapter also gets points for this for attending national events. So if you get a chance to attend, make sure you put it on your annual report you submit to Tom Van Fossen at the end of the year. Next. And on the 27th this month, we have the 244th anniversary of the Battle of Moores Creek. Same thing goes. Wear your uniform and attend. These events are national events that we from Texas could not afford to drive over there, spend the number of days there during the ceremonies, and be able to be a part of the program. So this is a once in a lifetime opportunity for all of us in Texas to attend a national event via Zoom and also receive credit for it. This is a wonderful opportunity for us here in Texas. So I urge all of you to take advantage of this.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate that. I would think, would you say that the report you just gave would also include your color guard report?
Yes.
Okay, good. Then we can just move that off the ledger. All right. Mr. Vice President, would you please talk to us about next month?
Okay, next month is we're going to be welcoming Vice President, Texar Vice President John Hamlin to talk about the contest and the awards that are handed out by Texar. But we'll also have a chance to welcome some of our recent award winners. I know we have a current oration candidate, as well as you're gonna have to help me here, Mr. President. I know we have the American History teacher winner, and I believe a essay winner from last year.
Yeah, we have the night essay winner from last year. We have the American History teacher who won the state. Both of those were state winners last year. We also, very fortunately, are going to have, this is the first time in my tenure here, we have the state winner for the enhanced ROTC winner from last year, a young lady from the Corps over at MacArthur High School. And she was the state winner as well. Now she was a junior when she won it. She's a senior this year. She's the cadet commander for the Corps at MacArthur, and she's going to, all of them won scholarships moving forward. The teacher that we're going to have speaking, this lady is just tremendous. She's also going to be helping us moving forward with getting other schools involved. She's been helping us with the poster contest for years. She also now has the state winner of the is the history teacher. She had a choice of a week in, well, it's 5 days in Valley Forge at the foundation on a fellowship, or $1,500 in cash. Well, she took the cash, and I don't blame her. So in addition to what the chapter will give this lady, because she gets $300 from us, she decided she's going to take the $1,800 that she got, and she's putting it right back into her own classroom. And I can't tell you how proud that made me feel when I heard her say that. So this is going to be our meeting of champions. Don't miss it. It's going to be a good one. Mark, anything else for the cause?
No, that's it for next month.
All right. I don't know that Jack Carpenter is still on. I know that he had an appointment this morning. And if he's not, I will tell you, he and I had planned to meet tomorrow, of all days, because I'm going to be picking up some medals from Tracy Pounder today. And he'll start the project a week later than we expected for the ROTC for this year. We're going to be mailing 55 different schools for ROTC and good citizenship medals. So that's going to be in the offing, and I'm sure that Jack will make an update later. Our registrar, Mr. Pinkerton, and Mr. Mark Morgan, assistant registrar.
Greetings. Thank you, Mr. President. Since our last meeting, we've had 3 inductions of new members. As you know, we don't have a place to meet, so we design places to have. Here is the induction of Bill Eastwood. His wife is with him, Jan, and John Tompkins and his wife, Kathleen. And then you see the color guard guys here. This was here at the residence where we live. All of us live. Bill and John and I and Brent Harshman live here. So that was one of the inductions. We had a single induction. The color guard went to the home of a junior member, Baxter Perry Miller, and we had his induction at his home. And then a few days after that, we had another outdoor induction with Timothy Schrant and his wife Callie, daughter Kara, and his son Alex, and also the new member Patrick Fly. This was at Cottonwood Park in Richardson. And we had a number, as you can see, a number of the color guard members that were present there. In addition to the inductions, we have, during the month, we had 8 new applications submitted to national, 6 regular and 2 supplementals. We have a number of applications still at national. We have several of them that were submitted in late December, and the current time frame for new membership is about 2 months. So we will probably have several. It looks like we'll have maybe 6 of them that will come through soon. We also, just for your information, those of you that have supplementals, we're now up to about 7 months from submission and the time it's logged in at national until it's approved. So that is more or less the current status of things. We have a number at national, a number in the queue, and we have 4 from Mr. Van Voss will hopefully be in the queue in the next few days. He is sponsoring his son, his grandson, and memorial application for his father and his grandfather.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And by the way, to both you and Mark, for the work that you've done. Again, I've learned more and more as I've worked with these 2 guys, the work that it takes to get this stuff, and then the time wait. I know that it takes a little bit of patience, but I can see how your work has blossomed every time we do one of these inductions. Quite frankly, I kind of like the inductions we've been doing outside in different places. To me, I think it adds a little flavor to the whole process, and I hope that it makes it more memorable for the newer members who are being inducted. I noticed, for instance, one of our new color guard members, JD Martin, who's on the call, we did that at his house last fall, or a year ago last fall, he and his son, and I know they won't forget it. So anyhow, Thank you, Jerry. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Well,
to our historian, Brent Harshman. Now I got to tell a story about Brent, because he collects and is putting together the scrapbook that will be submitted for our state meeting. But at the same time, you guys need to give this guy a hand. He has become the head cook and bottle washer in his house, because his good bride had some surgery and she has been down for a while. And so he's taken over the house chores. So Mr. Historian, how's it going?
It's going pretty well. As far as the scrapbook, notebook, we were making good progress with the assistance of my bride, my executive assistant. She's really been helping me a lot. until this surgery, which occurred on January 28th. So right now we are working to get back toward our the good progress that we were making on the 2020 notebook. And I appreciate all you guys who send in photos, minutes, treasury reports. We try to include everything we can to make a nice book to try to achieve the past glories of the scrapbook, or continue them, we hope.
Thank you, Brent. I appreciate the work that you've done, and I'm sure Aletha also is very happy with what you've been able to do around the house. Once we get past this current period of time, I'll get back with you, and maybe we can get together and see where we are.
All right.
All right. To our treasurer, Mr. Nick Harper. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, President Tom. Treasurer's report was sent out, the budget versus actual, to everybody on the membership that I have an email address for. I hope that everybody who has an email address did get a copy of this. If not, our balances for 31st of January 2021 are in Prosperity Bank, our checking account, $7,867. And for our two North Dallas Bank and Trust accounts, the Ritchie Fund, $29,743, and the Minuteman Fund, $9,324. As a bit of accommodation in there, I'd like to commend one of our more experienced members, Ralph McDowell, who made a gift of $250 to the Minuteman Fund. As soon as we have somebody in charge to take over the Minuteman Fund and the Ritchie Fund from Ralph, I will write a check to that account to add to the Minuteman Fund. Thank you, Tom. That's all I have.
Okay, Nick. Yeah, with some of the conversations that you and I have had, we're going to obviously do some work there. I also talked with David Temple. He's given me some advice and counsel, and our good friend Jerry Pinkerton, as you know, is going to help serve as a trustee moving forward with his accounting background. I'm sure that's going to be a big help. And you never replace somebody like Tom Smith, but at least he can move into the slot that Tom held and work with us on that. So thank you, Nick, and I will be back with you on those issues. Okay, well, folks, right now we move into the old business. Is there any old business that hasn't or needs to be discussed before we move on? And by that silence, I guess there's not. New business. At the time, I think all of the activities have been discussed as we're moving forward. I think everybody knows that the state meeting that is planned for April I'm getting something in my computer here. Hang on just a second. Yeah.
Have you got any information for everybody about the, other than the super awards meeting that we're going to have, about the first responders presentations?
Actually, I don't, but Mark has been in contact with both the police and fire. Mark, would you update us on that?
Yeah. Thanks for the question. I've talked to both our police representative as well as the fire department representative. As you know, we were not able to recognize the 2020 recipients of the different public safety awards last year. The March meeting was canceled at the last minute, and that's when we were going to do it. They're still not available for meeting in public now because of the city restrictions and stuff. So what we've agreed to do is, once restrictions are lifted, hopefully by this summer, we can, and they're supposed to be working on some new 2021 nominees for awards, but we'll have a combined 2020, 2021 recognition offsite somewhere. Don't have details yet until we get a little closer, but neither department was willing to let us meet with them in person at this point. So it's yet to be determined.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, I think at this point, Mark, would you give me a random number and a winner for our door prize?
Okay. Let me hang on one second. Let me share this. Hopefully you can see that. My bride was in here listening to the presentation by Stephen and really enjoyed it. So I asked her before she left to pick a number, and she picked 18, and that is John Guittard.
John. Fantastic. We'll have to find a way to get that to you. I still have three undelivered bottles, which are still sealed in my wine cellar, but I've got three to now I have 3 to deliver. So we'll find a way to get that to you. All right, gentlemen, if you would, I would ask Chaplain Pounders to give us the meeting benediction, and then we'll do the recessional. Chaplain Pounders, are you still with us?
Let me unmute him.
Okay.
What?
Okay, there we are.
Yes.
Chaplain Pounders, would you give us today's benediction?
Yes. And today is a day of benediction. It looks bad, but benediction means goodness. And that's what we need to keep our minds and hearts set upon. As we go through this day and the days that follow, no matter what it is, we remember that God is with us. So as we part one from the other, whether it's by phone or by any other method, do it with love in your heart. For tomorrow is Valentine's Day, and that means you should love each other, but not just tomorrow, always. Go and go in love. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Frank. And now, Mr. J.D. Martin, would you please lead us in the SAR recessional?
Till we meet again.
Yeah.
Let us remember our obligations to our fathers who gave us our Constitution, Bill of Rights, independent Supreme Court, and a nation of free men.
Thank you, J.D. I can't. Thanks very much, everybody. We look forward to seeing you in a month on Saturday, March the 13th. And again, watch your airwaves and your emails, and we'll get the stuff out to you. And I promise you, Mike Pedritas, we'll get you correct this time.
Thank you.
Okay. Just as a reminder, our speaker today, Stephen Jenkins, is still with us. So I think if he's agreeable for hanging on for a few minutes, there might be a few additional questions.
Thank you, Mark. I wanted to say something to Bill Watts before he went, if he's still there. Are you still there, Bill?
Right here.
Okay.
Right here.
Well, thank you for your service at Rockwell. Actually, a week ago, I went out to Rockwell twice to the St. Benedict's Anglican Church there, which holds its services in the Lutheran Church. And we were talking about doing God and Churchill after Easter at some cigar shop, but outside in the high street there somewhere. So they do a thing called Theology on Tap. And so I'll be over to Rockwell. And are you familiar with that church?
No, I'm not. No.
No, it's a new church plant. And so anyway, thank you, everybody. Thank you for your service with the vaccination, Bill. That's very important. Well done.
Get your shot.
Mr. Jenkins, I have a question.
Certainly.
Did you see the TV series Turn? And what did you think, if you did, what did you think of the portrayal of Benedict and Peggy in that TV drama?
How long ago was that? Because there have been several, and I've got something in my mind that I think I did watch it. How long ago was that?
It was like 2014 to 2017.
Yes, I think I did see it. And of course, I think it makes good television, doesn't it, to
Yeah.
pick out Peggy Shippen and to kind of lay all the blame on her, as it were, you know.
That's excellent.
Actually, I have got that quote of Peggy Shippen's now, and I wanted to share it with you, perhaps as an encouragement, because we're all going through lots of disappointments at the moment, aren't we? I can't see my grandson very much, and we can't see each other. And this is what she said. These things, meaning disappointments, are wisely ordained by God Almighty for some good purpose that perhaps we don't know about, and his justice and mercy we cannot doubt. So I got Peggy's quote in there somehow. And I also wanted to circle back to the Magna Carta. That was mentioned earlier on by our lawyer friend there. In the Magna Carta, it says the Church of England must be free and is not to be interfered with by government. So actually what happened is, round about the time of the Hanoverians, government got more and more into the Church of England. So you had people like George Whitefield come to America, and out of George Whitefield came the Free Church of England. So the Free Church of England, which I'm a minister of, is not is in communion with the Church of England, but is not into so much. It's not a state church. It's not a state church. So I wanted to make that clear. Yeah.
Interesting.
Anybody else? Well, thank you very much. Really enjoyed it. It was good to be with you all.
Thank you, Steve. I have one question, Stephen.
Yes.
How do we eat if we want to get on the list for the Churchill Society?
Well,
how do we,
just shoot me an email. Anybody who wants to is interested in any of those things, in Waxahachie or the Churchill Society. I really want to form a base up here in North Dallas as well. So any suggestions about where we could meet or do something there? Yeah, just shoot me an email. Once I've got your email.
I know, but how do we get your email?
Hang on just a second. I'm just about to
put it back on the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
There it is. It's boomerhinterland@gmail.com. Boomer, because I am a boomer. Hinterland is something all our politicians need. It comes from an English politician called Dennis Healy, who was kind of finance minister. And he said it's very good if politicians have other interests or hinterland, a place they can go in their mind for their hobbies, music, reading, whatever it is that takes them out of the political world for a while. So it's boomerhinterland@gmail.com. And Stephen Jenkins. That'll reach me.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Okay.
I had a question for the speaker from Ventana. Where exactly is Ventana? Is it that new one on the 75 and Mockingbird?
No.
It's not Mockingbird, but it's 75 and Loop 12, right across the highway.
It's right off Northwest Highway. Yeah. That's a big place, isn't it? I visited it. Big place.
And we have 4 members that reside here.
You do. Interesting. Yeah. And I did visit it about 2 years ago when it was just kind of opening up.
Oh.
Yeah. Just a quick visit.
Stephen, we were very fortunate that Jerry and Brent Harshman, who's on this call, they got together with Tom Whitelock and I last 4th of July.
Yes.
We actually put on a private 4th of July parade for the residents of Ventana.
Oh, you did?
It was a great hit.
Yeah, I bet it was.
If you don't have a parade, you create one. And this is a
Great.
Yeah, very good.
That's a photo taken of Jerry at that parade, I believe.
Yeah. So how can I ask you, how are residents feeling now about visitors coming back, because the message I get from Highland Springs is, which I was doing a lot of visiting and with them last year, is the residents at the moment are just kind of want to be with themselves. They don't really, then it's difficult for them to kind of get back to normal, as it were, with the interchange of people coming in and out.
The way that we have undertaken that here at the Ventana is that the first of this week, they opened it up to, you could bring visitors in if they went through the pre-entrance protocol.
Yes.
Have them come to your room, but they cannot go to the dining areas or anything. You have to escort them to your apartment and back. So
yeah, interesting. Good. Anybody else? No. Well, you've shown a lot of interest. Thank you for those questions.
Once again, we appreciate you being here today, and you're always welcome to join us if you're looking for something to do on the second Saturday of each month. So,
okay.
Thank you. Alex, thank you so much for your assistance on this too.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everybody.
Yep.
I'm going to leave you now. Say goodbye.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to stop the recording, Mr. President.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And again, for everybody that joined us, good program today. You did a good job putting it together, Mark. Really appreciate that. And by the way, Mitch Singleton, I see your picture coming up there in front of me. Obviously, we won't be doing your award next week. But I have put Jerry Pinkerton and Mark and Bill Watts on notice that when we can get a good, clear, crisp day, we want to arrive at your front of your residence and be able to honor you as you should be. So we've still got you in the offing. All right, Mark, I think we're done.
Okay, thanks all.
See you next month.
Okay.
Stay warm.
Yeah. Stay virus free.
Yeah, exactly.
Tracy, I'll get that information.
Thanks, Robert.
Okay.